deception, anger, gossip, fame, mystery, a beautiful life ripped away.
At first glance, this case seems straightforward. I mean, it's obvious, right? The guy who wanted her and couldn't have her became enraged. No? That's not it? What is it then? Well, there are at least two stories. One is the coherent story that you've heard about on the news and various podcasts. And the other is what the evidence says. And they're not quite the same. Anna Mariah Wilson, who her friends refer to as Mo, traveled to Austin, Texas in 2022 for a cycling event. She stayed at a friend's house. The friend's name is Kaitlin Cash. Mo went swimming to a public pool with fellow renowned cyclist Colin Strickland. After they went swimming, they went for dinner, and then he dropped her off at home. A few hours later, her friend, I'll refer to Kaitlin Cash as Cash because there's two Kaitlins in this story. So her friend, Cash, comes home and finds her body. Surveillance video picked up a vehicle passing by, and that vehicle is similar to the vehicle belonging to Colin Strickland's girlfriend, Kaitlin Armstrong. Police questioned Armstrong and let her go. A couple of days after being questioned, she left. She sold her vehicle, she got on a plane, and ended up in Costa Rica. Then there was a manhunt. Now remember, Kaitlin hadn't been arrested. She wasn't under arrest, but fleeing obviously looks really bad. She was caught, brought back to the United States, and charged for the homicide of Anna Mariah Wilson. One of the other things that everybody keeps noting is that while she was being questioned, she pretty much remained silent. Listen, if it looks to you like your live-in boyfriend did something horrendous like this, or maybe that somebody suspects you, you're going to be guarded. And this issue of her being quiet is going to come up again. And I want to point out here, and I'll repeat it, you have the right to remain silent. And Kaitlin Armstrong isn't doing herself any favors. Recently, she tried to escape custody, and it looked pretty elaborate. It looked like it was planned, that she faked a leg injury, and on the way to the medical center, she escaped the guards and fled. Now they chased her and caught her pretty quickly, but this doesn't look good either. Flight doesn't mean a person's guilty. Those are the facts. Everything else is in dispute. Grab your coffee and a snack. We're going to go through the court documents. And just to let you know, as we go through, I will ask questions out loud. And those questions might be answered later on in the document. And the reason I decided to do it this way was so that you could go through the process with me. And hey, maybe there are things I don't spot on the first reading, but you do. So we can go through this together. I think that the subscribers, anyway, to this channel are intelligent people. You've seen this stuff before, so I don't think I need to spoon feed you. And the other thing is that the public has been given sound bites and a nice, clean story. But these things aren't usually so cut and dry. I thought we'll just go through the process and you can make up your own mind. I don't know whether or not Kaitlin Armstrong did this thing. That will be for a jury to decide. I think we can all agree that whoever did this can't be allowed to get away with it. We're going to start with the affidavit and application for arrest warrant. On May 11th, 2022, at approximately 9:56 p.m., APD Officer Martin Salinas responded to a Czech welfare urgent call at 1708 Maple Avenue in Austin, Travis County, Texas. Officer Salinas arrived on the scene and located the caller, later identified as Kaitlin Cash, inside of the residence, performing CPR on a female subject, later identified as Anna Wilson. Officers on scene reported Wilson had multiple defects on her body that had the appearance of gunshot wounds. Officers observed multiple fired cartridge cases on the floor near Wilson, but a firearm was not immediately observed. Wilson was pronounced deceased at 10:10 p.m. by Dr. Escott. They say multiple fired cartridge cases, but they don't say how many. However, the fact that there's multiple tells us that at the very least, this wasn't some intruder who came to rob her. More than one gunshot was not necessary to effect a robbery, so it doesn't look like that. Next paragraph. Cash stated the decedent was her friend, who was a professional cyclist and visiting from San Francisco. Cash advised she picked up Wilson from the airport on May 10th, 2022, and Wilson had come to Austin for a bicycle race in the coming weekend in Hico, Texas. So she'd only been there a day. On May 11th, 2022, Cash stated she had received a text message from Wilson, stating Wilson was going to meet up with a friend named Colin to go swimming. Cash stated she was at a nearby residence and went home to speak with Wilson about her going out with Colin. Cash advised she left her residence around 5:30 p.m. to meet with some of her friends and have dinner. As she left, she observed Wilson's large bicycle travel bag sitting next to the front door on the elevated porch. Cash advised she went back inside and told Wilson to take the bag inside of the house before she leaves so no one steals it. Cash advised after eating with her friends, she returned to the residence and observed the large bicycle travel bag at the bottom of the stairs, partially blocking the carport. Cash advised she went inside of her residence approximately 2 minutes before she dialed 911 and noticed the front door to the residence was unlocked. Cash stated Wilson was observed lying on the bathroom floor covered in blood and no one else was inside. Cash advised Wilson's Specialized S-Works bicycle appeared to be stolen, but nothing else inside was missing. Officers checked the area and located Wilson's bicycle approximately 68 feet south of Cash's residence, concealed in thick bamboo. Wow. So the fact that Wilson texted Cash while Cash was out to say she was going out swimming with Colin suggests that the plan to go swimming was on the spur of the moment, or at least made pretty quickly, pretty recently. I think that if Wilson already had plans to go out with Colin, instead of waiting for Cash to be out and then texting her while she's out busy, she would have just told her that, either before she left or the day before. The information about the bicycle travel bag is interesting. Not sure yet what it means. I do wonder about the neighborhood, so if anybody knows that neighborhood, maybe you can comment. In some neighborhoods, you could leave a bag out on your porch, and other neighborhoods you can't, so that makes me question what the neighborhood is like. That might just be Cash's personality. The other thing about the bag is that it was moved, and we don't know whether Wilson moved it or if somebody else moved it. The most interesting thing in this paragraph is the bit about the bike. This is a specialized bike. This bike is for a pro cyclist. We can already see, just based on the facts here, that the crime was not about robbery. So why take the bike? And if that was just a matter of opportunity, why not keep it? This, to me, looks staged. Where it says that the bike was concealed in thick bamboo, we don't know whether somebody purposely concealed the bike or just tossed it there and there happened to be thick bamboo and it was concealing it. I don't know. Either way, it's odd to take a really expensive bike and leave it only 68 feet from the house. An alternative theory would be that somebody took her bike to get quickly to their getaway car. But if that's the case, then whoever did this would have had to have known that the bike was there and not locked. Next paragraph. Cash identified Colin Strickland as the subject who Wilson was going to swim with. Cash further advised, Strickland lives in the Austin area and is a professional cyclist sponsored by Red Bull. APD detectives were able to locate multiple photos from online open source media containing a subject named Colin Strickland, who appeared to be a professional bicycle racer sponsored by Red Bull. The subject was fully identified as Colin Strickland, a white male born November 17, 1986. Strickland's issued Texas driver's license showed an address in Austin, Travis County, Texas. Next paragraph. Cash spoke with Detective Spittler and explained she has an electronic lock on the door to her residence that is unlocked by using a unique code. Cash stated when the unique code is used, she receives a notification on her phone advising the door has been unlocked. Cash further explained the electronic lock has a lock button on the keypad that will also alert her when the door is locked. Cash advised she provided Wilson with a unique code for only her to use. Cash showed the notification she received from the electronic lock to Detective Spittler, who observed Cash received a notification at 5:55 p.m. showing the door was locked, indicating Wilson left to go swimming. The next notification Cash received was at 8:36 p.m. showing the unique code Wilson was provided by Cash was used to unlock the door, indicating Wilson returned. Cash advised she has recently changed the unique code and unknown to others. I think they mean it's unknown to others. Well, there's something missing in this paragraph here. And maybe it's not a big deal, but it does leave questions in my mind as to A, what the answer is, and B, why the answer is not in here. The thing that's missing is whether or not the notifications showed that the door was locked after Wilson returned, and whether or not the door was subsequently locked or unlocked. This is just my report writing training kicking in. Sometimes you have to actually say in your report that there wasn't evidence of a thing. Defense counsel can jump all over gaps like that. So stick a pin in that in your brain. I want to know the answer to that. Next paragraph. Detective Rolando Ramirez observed a surveillance camera mounted on the exterior of a residence near the crime scene. This residence is directly north of Cash's residence, and the camera faces a driveway next to Cash's residence. Detective Ramirez spoke to the homeowners, and they allowed him to review the surveillance video. In the video, Detective Ramirez observed a dark-colored SUV drive past the residence with the surveillance cameras at 8:37 p.m., 1 minute after Wilson entered Cash's residence, according to the locking mechanism. The dark-colored SUV then slowed down, appearing to come to a stop directly next to Cash's residence. The SUV appeared to have a large bicycle rack mounted on the trailer hitch of the vehicle, a luggage rack mounted on the roof, and what appeared to be chrome around the windows. No other vehicles were observed on the video surveillance passing by until marked emergency vehicles arrived. Okay, we know that Kaitlin Armstrong owned an SUV very much like that. The fact that there's a bicycle rack and a luggage rack makes the vehicle a little bit more unique than something that's just right off the lot. It's not enough to say it's conclusive that that was Armstrong's vehicle. However, it's awfully coincidental. I would like to see the actual video. And it appeared to come to a stop. So I would like to know if it was seen leaving or if it just continued, after stopping, if it continued travel in the same direction so it wouldn't have passed by that particular surveillance camera again. I'm also interested in knowing about vehicles seen in the neighborhood prior to this time. And although this looks really bad, there's something not quite fitting here. So let's say Wilson opened the door at 8:36 p.m. And let's say, just for the sake of argument, let's say that SUV was really being driven by Armstrong. She doesn't drive by until a minute later. So how does she know which residence Wilson is going into? And if she stopped, then what? Are they suggesting she stopped, ran into the house, knowing the door was unlocked, committed the crime, and then took Wilson's bike and hit it, and then went back to her vehicle and drove away? I don't know. It doesn't quite fit together. Now, this could suggest that Armstrong was following Wilson. Actually, she wouldn't have been following Wilson. She would have been following Colin Strickland. And if that's the case, then was her vehicle seen at or near the public swimming pool, or at or near wherever Colin and Mo went for dinner? And when Colin was dropping Mo off and talking and saying their goodbyes outside of her house, where was Kaitlin then? Houses away, driving back and forth, waiting, watching somewhere? It's not quite hanging together that this piece of information would equal her going in, committing the crime, and hiding the bike and doing all this. Let me know what you think. Also notice that the officer does include the fact that no other vehicles were observed in this paragraph. So if he knows enough to include it here, why the absence of the information about the lock in the previous paragraph? I'm not saying he did on purpose. I'm not saying it necessarily means anything. I'm just noticing. On May 12, 2022, officers assigned to the Lone Star Fugitive Task Force drove to the address listed on Strickland's Texas driver's license and observed a 2012 Jeep Cherokee bearing Texas license plate, I'm not going to read the plate number, with a large bicycle rack mounted on the trailer hitch of the vehicle, a luggage rack mounted on the roof, and chrome around the windows that appeared to be the same vehicle observed on surveillance footage. Well, yeah, if you show up at the home of the last person who saw her alive and you see that vehicle there, yeah, you're going to get real interested and a little bit excited about that. Detective Spittler and Detective Jason Ayers, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, responded to Strickland's listed address and spoke with Strickland. Upon arrival, Detective Spittler observed 3 vehicles in the driveway. The vehicles were identified as the following: 2002 BMW motorcycle, 1998 Mercedes, 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Strickland voluntarily agreed to drive to the Austin Police Headquarters for a formal interview. Before the interview began, Detective Spittler told Strickland he was free to leave at any time. Strickland advised he currently lives with his girlfriend, Kaitlin Armstrong, a white female born on November 21st, 1987. Strickland stated they have been dating for approximately 3 years, but briefly ended their relationship for 1 to 2 weeks in October 2021. During Armstrong and Strickland's breakup, he met the victim, Wilson. Wilson and Strickland then had a romantic relationship before Strickland ultimately began dating Armstrong again. Oh, come on, you can't be serious. 1 to 2 weeks they were broken up for. So in the space of 1 to 2 weeks, he met the victim, developed a relationship that blossomed into a romance, and then, changed his mind? What does romantic relationship mean? Is that a hookup? Is that a relationship? What is that? Am I the only one who finds this unbelievable? I am suspicious that perhaps he's a bit of a player, that maybe he was cultivating a relationship with Wilson and she didn't know that he was with somebody. Oh, I don't believe this. Sorry, I'll try and get through the whole paragraph. Strickland advised while he and Wilson were dating, Armstrong called Wilson on the phone, telling Wilson she was the one who was dating Strickland. Strickland told Detective Spittler he has had to change Wilson's name in his phone so Armstrong does not know who he is speaking to as they continue their relationship. As who continues which relationship? if Wilson and Strickland are not together, they only had a romantic relationship for a week or two, and Strickland is so committed to Armstrong, then why does he even still have Wilson's number? Maybe I'm biased here. Maybe I'm a little old-fashioned. Strickland admitted he had to change Wilson's name in his phone because Armstrong had blocked Wilson's number in Strickland's phone. Strickland also advised he has had to delete text messages on his phone to prevent Armstrong from finding them. I think this is meant to look like, ooh, she's so jealous, but I don't know. I can understand somebody saying, hey, I need you to delete this phone number. I need you to not have contact with this person. I could see that. And that does not mean that the person is going to go commit a horrendous crime. We'd have a lot more on the books if that was the case. What I'm seeing is that Colin Strickland is a liar. And not only is he a liar, he will continue to lie because he wants something. He is deceptive in general. This is not a one-off lie because you want to avoid getting in trouble for something or you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. He continued to engage in behavior and continue to lie about it. This man is deceptive. And he has basically admitted that. We are going to get to Colin Strickland's statement to the police in another video. This is where all the talk of the love triangle comes in. But Wilson's family is saying she wasn't with anybody. They are clear about that. And we only have here the word of a liar to describe the relationship. We don't know what it was and what it meant or what promises were or were not made or how long it went on. We don't know. Next paragraph. Strickland advised he picked up Wilson on his motorcycle on the day of the crime at approximately 5:45 p.m. from Cash's residence, and they went to the City of Austin Deep Eddy Pool, located at 401 Deep Eddy Avenue, Austin, Travis County, Texas. Strickland stated after swimming, he and Wilson walked to Pool Burger, located at 2315 Lake Austin Boulevard. Strickland advised after they ate, he drove Wilson back to Cash's residence on his motorcycle and dropped her off. Strickland advised as he arrived, he did not observe anyone nearby and noted the garage door to the garage located underneath Cash's residence was closed. Strickland advised he did not go inside of the residence and left promptly after dropping off Wilson. Strickland advised he drove his motorcycle northbound through an alleyway until East Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Strickland advised he stopped his motorcycle and sent a text message from his phone to Armstrong at 8:36 p.m. This text message stated the following. Hey, are you out? I went to drop some flowers for Allison at her son's house up north, and my phone died. Heading home unless you have another food suggestion. Strickland had lied about his whereabouts to Armstrong to hide he was with Wilson throughout the evening. Well, and the time is interesting here. He stopped his motorcycle and sent the text message 8:36 p.m. Next paragraph. Strickland advised he rode his motorcycle home and arrived at approximately 8:43. Strickland advised he sent another text message to Armstrong around this time and recalled being nearby his residence when he sent it. Strickland went into the garage and began working on his bicycle to prepare for an upcoming. While in the garage, Strickland sent another text message to Armstrong at 9:21 p.m. Strickland advised not long after he sent that message, Armstrong arrived to the residence driving the 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee with the large bicycle rack mounted on the trailer head of the vehicle, a luggage rack mounted on the roof, and chrome around the windows. Wow, they're really trying to drive this home. Strickland advised Armstrong was the only occupant inside the vehicle. This is odd. He rode his motorcycle home and arrived at around 8:43, and he sent another text message around the same time and was only nearby his residence. So far, I haven't seen anything about Armstrong about her phone being examined, so we'll have to see if that comes up. Throughout the interview, Strickland spoke very highly of Wilson and her accomplishments. Strickland advised Wilson was a professional cyclist and was assisting her with obtaining new sponsors. I think that means he was assisting her. Strickland referred to Wilson as the best female cyclist in the United States and possibly the world.
When Strickland described Armstrong, he referred to her as a participant at bicycle races, while he is a racer. Strickland stated he told Armstrong in the past she does not need to ride with him because she holds him back. Strickland advised Armstrong normally feels as though he's grumpy while training because he has to wait on Armstrong due to her not being able to ride at a professional level.
Wow. According to Strickland, Wilson is the best in the world. But the way he speaks of Armstrong, he makes it sound she's beneath him. I mean, it's condescending. It sounds like there's contempt there. I mean, look at the way he views her. He looks down on her. And I noticed the other thing that he's saying he was helping Wilson obtain new sponsors. Maybe that's true. And that's nice of him. Does anyone know him? Does he hold himself up as a sort of, savior? This whole paragraph puts a knot in my stomach. I hope they looked really closely at this guy. I mean, really, I hope they investigated the crap out of him. Detective Spittler asked Strickland about the vehicles in the driveway and who owned them. Strickland advised he owns the 2002 BM motorcycle and owns the 1990 Mercedes. Strickland advised the other vehicle, the 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee, belongs to Armstrong. Strickland advised he does not drive the Jeep and only Armstrong drives it. Strickland admitted to purchasing firearms approximately December 2021 and January 22, one for himself and one for Armstrong. Strickland advised he purchased a Springfield Armory handgun for himself and a Sig Sauer handgun for Armstrong. Strickland told Detective Spittler Armstrong does not know where Wilson was staying, has never been to Cash's residence before. Strickland advised he was unaware Armstrong knew anyone in the area the crime occurred. Very interesting. So first of all, Colin Strickland purchased the guns. So if one of these guns used in the crime, investigators are going to put it in the hand of the accused because both of these people have access to these guns, including the remark that Strickland was unaware Armstrong knew anyone in the area can cut both ways. On the one hand, if she doesn't know anyone in the area, she doesn't have an excuse. If, in fact, that vehicle was hers and she was driving it. Let's say it was. If she doesn't know anyone in the area, she has no reason to be there. So that goes against her. But on the flip side, if she doesn't know anyone in the area and she has never been to Cash's residence before and she didn't know where Wilson was staying, how does she go there? The only explanation for that would be if she followed Strickland and Wilson on that day. Because remember, Wilson had only been there a day. I would like to know, did he drive from his house to Cash's house, or was he somewhere else and then drove to Cash's house? If he was at home immediately prior, was Kaitlin Armstrong home as well? Did she see him leave and then wait and follow him? Or was she not home? Did he drive to Cash's house from some other location where Armstrong was not? I mean, she'd have to know to follow Colin on this date at this time. So what are they alleging it was that twigged her to follow them? Did Armstrong know Wilson was in town? Because we already know that Strickland lied to her about where he was. So it's not like he said, hey, I'm going to go hang out with Mo for a little while. That's not what happened. Next paragraph. While Detective Spittler was conducting the interview with Strickland, Detective Ayers, along with members of the AP TAC Intel Unit, executed residential search warrant. During the search, officers located 2 firearms in the residence as described by Strickland. The 2 firearms located were identified as the Sig Sauer and the Springfield arms. It was discovered by officers of the Lone Star Fugitive Task Force that Armstrong had an outstanding Class B warrant for her arrest. The Lone Star Fugitive Task Force located and apprehended Armstrong and was transported to the Austin Police Department Homicide Unit, where Detective Katie Connor interviewed her. During the interview, it was relayed to Detective Connor that the Class B warrant was not valid and she would be free to leave. Detective Connor advised Armstrong of the change and further advised her that she was free to leave, and the door was open. They got this search warrant pretty quickly, which is great, and they went and searched and got these guns. Well, at that time, why did they not get a search warrant, or did they, and they're not saying here, for Kaitlin Armstrong's vehicle? They're searching the residence. I would like to see the warrant. I would like to see what was in that warrant, all the things that they were looking for. I want to know what they were focused on. And I'm really curious. Why didn't they take her car, the SUV? How was she able to hang on to that vehicle and then later sell it? If they were able to get the search warrant and they have a video of the vehicle, of a vehicle that matches the description of Armstrong's vehicle, was there no search of that? And if there was a search, why aren't we hearing about it? Next paragraph. Armstrong was asked if she had heard what happened in the past 24 hours. Armstrong began to nod her head and stated Strickland walked into the house and said one of the women in the cycling community had passed away. Armstrong was very still and did not move at all as they spoke. When confronted on how Strickland was talking to this girl, and Armstrong's name came up during the investigation, she continued to stay quiet and completely still. When Armstrong was confronted with video evidence of her vehicle, she had no explanation to why it was in the area and did not make any denials surrounding the statements presented to her. She doesn't have to deny. Remaining silent means remaining silent. You can do that. Exercising your right does not make you guilty. Detective Connor then confronted her on how Strickland went out with Wilson and that Armstrong was upset about that. Armstrong then turned her head and rolled her eyes in an angry manner. Armstrong then stated, I'm certain as to even what you mean or what he said because I didn't have any idea that he saw or even went out with this girl as of recently. When confronted about how Armstrong's vehicle was seen next to Cash's residence and how Strickland was saying certain things, Detective Connor explained she wanted her help to explain what actually happened and to help provide a logical explanation about why her vehicle was in the area. Detective Connor then stated, maybe you were just upset and just in the area.
Armstrong then began to nod in agreement.
Oh boy. Wow. Armstrong turned her head and rolled her eyes. That should be the end of the sentence. Characterizing it, saying in an angry manner. You are imposing your interpretation. This is report writing 101, man. He who alleges must prove. She rolled her eyes. If the interviewing officer believed that it was
in an angry manner,
if that's the case, then instead of saying in an angry manner, you're supposed to describe the behavior so that somebody else can understand. For example, if somebody makes a statement and their face becomes red and the veins in their temple pop out and they wave their fist in the air, that looks like they're speaking in an angry manner. So you would say the face turned red, the veins were popped out, and he was waving his fist, instead of saying he stated it in an angry manner. You have to describe what it is. You can't just put your interpretation, just stick it in there. This is an affidavit, for Pete's sake. So Armstrong stated, I didn't have any idea that he went out with the girl as of recently. So according to her, she didn't know that Colin and Mo were going out that night. Colin does not come clean with Kaitlin. He doesn't say, holy crap, I saw her and now this happened. No.
He says one of the women passed away.
What the heck? It's common for a detective to offer an explanation like, well, maybe we're upset and just in the area. They want the person being interviewed to latch on to one of those explanations. They don't care that the explanation might not be the truth. If they could get Armstrong to say, yeah, I was in the area, I got lost. Yeah, I was in the area for any reason, then they've got her in the area, right? Except Armstrong is exercising her right to remain silent. And here it says, Armstrong then began to nod in agreement. Well, began to nod. Did she nod or not? In agreement. How do you know it was in agreement? A nod does not always mean yes, does not always mean I agree. Sometimes a nod means, yeah, I'm hearing you. I'm listening. Go on. A nod can mean, I see what you're doing here. You can't just assume that a nod is agreement. If anybody can get their hands on the video of this interrogation, I would love to take that apart. Next paragraph. Detective Connor then confronted Armstrong on how seeing her vehicle in the area, coupled with the statements made by Strickland, made things not look too good. Armstrong then again nodded her head up and down as if in agreement. Armstrong again made no effort to deny what was being said and still provided no explanation as to why her vehicle would be there. Armstrong continued to remain very still and guarded as she spoke with Detective Connor. Armstrong then requested to leave, so the interview was ended. Imagine sitting in an interview room and coming to the realization that this victim of a crime has a connection to your live-in partner. And your partner, even when he told you that the woman passed away, didn't tell you anything else, didn't explain anything, didn't come clean. Imagine how your mind would race sitting under that internal and external pressure. And then imagine now they're looking at you. Suddenly they're thinking it looks bad on you. And you gotta wonder, what the heck did my partner say about me? Is she sitting there thinking that he did it? Is she confident that he is not going to lie about her? Is she sitting there thinking, yeah, this looks really bad and everybody loves Colin Strickland, so what am I going to say? We don't know what was going through her head. Maybe what was going through her head was, yeah, I did it and I'm not going to tell you. But you can't just take this and say, well, she exercised her right to remain silent and therefore we can just put whatever spin we want on it and use that against her. And let me say again, if she did this, I hope she's convicted. But if she didn't, man, I hope the jury sees it. And yeah, that video of the vehicle and the connection with Strickland, yeah, makes it look bad for her. But this makes me ask again, why didn't they take that vehicle? Or if they did, why is the information as to what they found not in this affidavit? Multiple gunshot wounds, there very well could have been trace evidence in that vehicle. I guess we're going to see at the trial if they searched it and when they searched it. It's just really weird. The chain of custody of evidence is really important. The preservation of evidence is really important. When they first saw that vehicle in the driveway, did they do anything? Did they take a picture of it? Did they try to in any way secure that? Did they keep an eye on it to see if she went and washed it or anything else? Did they do anything to preserve that evidence? Maybe they did, and it's just not here in black and white. There's lots of information that is not in this particular document. On May 13th, 2022, Detective Spittler contacted Wilson's friend, who was fully identified in APD report he names the report, and referred to by the pseudonym Jane. Jane provided information on the condition she would remain anonymous to prevent being targeted by Armstrong. Jane advised Wilson and Strickland have had multiple romantic relationships together and described it as an on-again, off-again relationship. Jane stated Wilson's and Strickland's romantic relationship started during Wilson's first trip to Austin in the fall of 2021. Jane advised Armstrong discovered Wilson's phone number and contacted Wilson several times, causing Wilson to block Armstrong's number. Jane stated Wilson told her within the past 2 months Armstrong began following Wilson on Instagram. Jane advised the last time Armstrong called Wilson, she told Wilson she was with Strickland and Wilson needed to stay away from him. Armstrong was phoning Wilson, and we already know this. She phoned Wilson and said, "Listen, I'm dating Colin. You back off. He's with me." This says that Armstrong contacted Wilson several times. We don't know when. We don't know over what period of time. On May 14th, 2022, an anonymous caller contacted the Austin Police Department to provide information regarding this incident. The caller refused to be identified, but advised she was with Armstrong in January 22. Wow, this all happening fast on May 14th. So word spread really fast. The caller advised Armstrong had just discovered Strickland was having a romantic relationship with Wilson, even though Armstrong and Strickland were still dating. The caller advised Armstrong became furious and was shaking in anger. Armstrong told the caller Armstrong was so angry Armstrong wanted to kill Wilson. Armstrong then proceeded to tell the caller Armstrong had either recently purchased a firearm or was going to. An initial search of Wilson's phone showed text messages regarding an event Wilson saw Strickland and Armstrong. The following is a message Wilson sent to Strickland while at the event in January. "Hey, so I would like to talk to you at some point. I had originally texted you on Friday, but it appears my texts aren't going through again. This weekend was strange for me, and I just want what's going on. If you just want to be friends, seems to be the case, then that's cool. But I'd like to talk about it because honestly, my mind has been going in circles and I don't know what to think. Am I the only one who thinks he was really playing her? When did Armstrong and start living together? To know that. If anybody knows, let me know. But if her number had been blocked, then how does he get this text? And let's talk about this anonymous caller. Why do they feel the need to be anonymous? At some point, they're going to have to testify, are they not? Or are they just going to leave this as a confidential informant? And note that the caller is mistaken. The caller claims that Armstrong either recently purchased a firearm or was going to. But the fact of the matter is that Armstrong never purchased the weapon. She didn't ask for a weapon to be purchased. Colin purchased the gun. The story here is awfully convenient. I'm not trusting this caller. That's a significant mistake. To make that claim when it didn't happen, it's really damning for the accused, and it's also demonstrably false. Next paragraph. Strickland replied to the following the next day. See, the text couldn't have been blocked. He's just not responding. Maybe because Kaitlin's beside him or something. Oh, I think he's a player. I'm not saying he did anything, but So this is his response. He says, "Hey Mo, I feel very shitty for putting you in a position where you don't feel comfortable. Kaitlin came along the go to a meeting about Sprinter Spartan Hotel project. In hindsight, this was not a good idea. Based off of this conversation, Wilson appeared under the impression she was still in a romantic relationship with Strickland, even though he was currently dating Armstrong." So all the high praise that he spoke to the police about the victim, clearly he didn't actually respect her. They were just words. And he had a purpose
I'll let you decide what you think that purpose is. During Strickland's interview, he advised he purchased a firearm for Armstrong around this time. Based off the corroborating information discovered throughout this investigation, it would be reasonable to believe the anonymous caller is a credible witness. What? No, it's actually the opposite. Strickland purchased the firearm around this time, not Armstrong. It makes the caller not credible. It makes the caller either lying or mistaken. Okay, next paragraph. On May 15th, 2022, Detective Spittler was canvassing the neighborhood where the crime occurred in an attempt to locate video surveillance. While searching, Detective Spittler was approached by David Harris. Harris is the property owner where Cash resides and rents the apartment above his detached garage to Cash. Harris advised that on May 11th, 2022, between 8:30 p.m. and 9:30, he walked into his garage and partially raised his garage door. Harris advised after doing so, he heard what he described as someone running down the stairs that led to Cash's front door. Harris advised he believed he observed a bicycle travel southbound through the alleyway from Cash's apartment. This is why they earlier mentioned the garage door. Based on what this witness is saying, it sounds like this crime could have occurred between 8:30 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. I'm curious though. He hears a bike, he hears someone running down the stairs. Why didn't he hear a gunshot? I don't know the layout of the place, so that's going to make a difference. Throughout this investigation, detectives assigned to the APD Homicide Unit, APD Aggravated Assault Unit, and officers assigned to the TAC Intel Unit have collected various surveillance footage corroborating statements made by Strickland showing Armstrong's vehicle in the area of the crime. The following is a collaboration of the video timeline. 8:16 p.m. Strickland and Wilson leave the parking lot of Poolburger on Strickland motorcycle. So they have video of that. Are we going to see that there's video of Kaitlin Armstrong's vehicle at that Poolburger or in that area? This jumps to 8:26 p.m. Armstrong's vehicle, I don't know if it's really her vehicle. Let's just say it is, okay? Armstrong's vehicle drives northbound on Maple Avenue, then westbound on East 18th. We don't have any video, according to this, of Armstrong following them. 8:35 p.m. Strickland drives northbound through the alleyway north of East 18th on his motorcycle. 8:36. The unique code given to Wilson is used to unlock Cash's door to her residence. The way this is laid out, he's driving away at 8:35 and it takes her a minute to unlock the door. 8:36. Wilson unlocks the door. 8:37. Armstrong's vehicle appears to stop next to Cash's residence. 8:48. Strickland drives southbound in the 4900 block of SI-35 SB frontage road, approximately 8 miles from Cash's residence. I can see why they say, oh, he didn't do this, because it looks like he was 8 miles away. But it only looks like that if you assume that the crime occurred at 8:37 p.m. Cash didn't get home until about 10 o'clock at night. This witness is saying sometime between 8:30 and 9:30. That's an hour. On the cameras belonging to the neighbor, the camera that picked up the SUV, no other vehicles showed up on that camera after 8:37. If you're coming from the opposite direction, you wouldn't necessarily get picked up on that camera. It's possible that the crime occurred at 8:37. It's also possible that it occurred at 9:30. Next paragraph. On May 17th, 2022, the Sig Sauer belonging to Armstrong, which was recovered from Strickland's residence, was test fired. The fired test cartridge shell case from the Sig Sauer was entered into the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. The fired test cartridge case was compared microscopically
to the shell cases located next to the body. An investigative lead was developed through the correlation review of ballistic evidence. The potential that the same firearm was involved is significant. The investigator is telling the truth here. Just know this does not mean it is a match. It means it looks good. Let's say it is a match. You still have to put it in Kaitlin Armstrong's hand, because you know who else had access to that? Colin Strickland. You know, the last person who saw her alive. In a case like that, when you have two people who both potentially have motives and the two suspects live together, you have to really dot your I's and cross your T's to make sure that you're getting the right one. I'm not saying who did it and who didn't. I'm just saying you have to have your ducks all lined up pretty well. My doubts might be completely off base. I may change my mind about all these doubts I'm having when we see the trial, when we see the evidence. And this affidavit is not the whole kit and caboodle. It's not everything. It's not everything they have. But just based on this, I have questions. Last paragraph. Strickland's statements have been corroborated through video surveillance and physical evidence. Strickland has cooperated with the investigation and has voluntarily provided statements to homicide detectives. Armstrong is the only person who resides with Strickland at the residence and has access to the Sig Sauer. Video surveillance shows Strickland leaving the area after dropping off Wilson and shows Armstrong's vehicle arriving to Cash's residence where Wilson was staying. Armstrong has made prior statements expressing a desire to kill Wilson. Strickland advised Detective Spittler he has not spoken with Armstrong since May 13th. Per anonymous tips reported to the APD homicide unit, Armstrong has deleted her social media accounts and has not been seen or heard from since this time either. Detective Spittler was able to view Armstrong's Instagram account the day after the crime, May 12th, but after searching through open source records, found it has now been deleted. Strickland's statements have been corroborated. I guess we have to take the officer's word for it. We're going to see at trial. He has cooperated. That's great. Not cooperating wouldn't make him guilty though. And he cooperated with a lawyer present, by the way. He voluntarily provided statements. Armstrong is the only person who resides with him and has access to that gun. If it turns out that what is being said here is true, if Strickland has an alibi backed up by evidence, if also that vehicle turns out to actually have been Kaitlin Armstrong's vehicle, that's really bad, especially if Colin was seen riding on the motorcycle. How far away do Colin and Kaitlin live from Cash? How long does it take to drive there? If it's true that his alibi is corroborated, even though he was there at the same time that Kaitlin was there, I mean, she's guilty and he's not. They were both there. Strickland, who we know not only is a liar, but who also can actually sustain deception. We are going to trust that he is also telling the truth. If all those things were true, it does look really bad. At what point did she start following them? By all accounts, I mean, she wasn't one to carry the gun around. She wasn't the one even interested in purchasing it. It was him. She'd never fired a weapon before. So it's not like she's just going to be carrying this gun around wherever she goes and then she happens to see Colin and Mo together and then does this thing. And why is there no evidence with all this? There's all this video evidence. Why is there no evidence of her following them? And you know what else I'm wondering about? She was found in the bathroom. Why? Why there?
Did she run into the bathroom to try and lock herself in? Was there a lock on that bathroom door? Was the door open or shut? I mean, I want to know a little bit more about that. How the sound travels. How do you get from the front door to the bathroom, the living room to the bathroom, that sort of thing. So was the person inside and she ran and tried to hide? Or was she surprised by the perpetrator? And that electronic lock, a lot of those things will automatically relock the door after several seconds. If it automatically locks, then that adds a new little wrinkle into everything. Did the perpetrator simply walk in, or did Wilson let him or her in? We don't know. And how many of you believe that Wilson would let Armstrong in? Do you think she parked the vehicle somewhere? She just tries the door, she goes right in with the gun that somehow she knew in advance that she would need to be carrying, and she'd arrived at the residence after Wilson was inside, but she knew which house to go into. Oh, but Colin says she doesn't know where Wilson stays even. And investigators included information to rule Colin Strickland out. They have made a point of saying they don't think that he did it. But you know, I'm seeing information about video footage at Pool Burger of Colin, but not Kaitlin. I want to know where she was. I want to know where she was before Colin went to meet Wilson. I want to know where she was the whole time. And the only one who knew what was really going on was Colin Strickland. And there's the bit about the bike. Remember right back in the beginning? Why take that bike? Why hide it? I have theories, and I can't say them publicly. I'll just leave it at this, that I have a lot of questions. And that's okay. And I could be wrong, and that's okay. If Kaitlin Armstrong is guilty, I hope it's so clear because of the evidence that nobody doubts. Especially the family walks away feeling like their questions were answered and that they're confident in those answers. See you in the comments. Stay safe.